The receipt landed on the table with a soft slap. At first, I barely looked at it. Everyone was laughing. Wine glasses clinked. The restaurant buzzed with the energy of a busy Friday night. I assumed it was simply the final bill for our group dinner. Then the waiter placed it directly in front of me. "Whenever you're ready, Ms. Morgan." I smiled politely and glanced down. The smile vanished instantly. $4,872.16 for a moment. I thought I was reading it wrong. I blinked. Looked again. Nearly $5,000. My stomach tightened. The noise around me faded into the background as I stared at the number. There had to be some mistake. I looked up at the waiter. "I'm sorry," I said. "I think this should be split between everyone." The waiter shifted uncomfortably. "No, we were informed that you would be covering the entire celebration." The entire table fell silent. 20 people turned to look at me. And that's when I noticed Olivia smiling. Not smiling with me. Smiling at me. There was something strange in her expression. Something cold. Something that made me suddenly feel exposed. My name is Stephanie Morgan. I'm 36 years old, and until that night, I believed I knew exactly who my friends were. 3 weeks earlier, I had received the biggest promotion of my career. After years of late nights, impossible deadlines, and sacrificing weekends, I had finally become Senior Operations Director at the company where I'd worked for over a decade. The promotion meant more than money. It meant recognition. Validation. Proof that all those years of hard work had actually mattered. When the news became official, my phone exploded with congratulations. Co-workers called. Family members texted. Friends sent flowers. And Olivia was one of the first people to contact me. "We're celebrating this properly," she had said. No excuses. At the time, her excitement felt genuine. Now, sitting in one of the most expensive restaurants downtown, I wasn't so sure. Olivia and I had been friends for over 10 years. We met when we were both struggling to build our lives. We shared apartments. Shared secrets. Shared dreams. When one of us cried, the other showed up with ice cream and cheap wine. At least, that's how I remembered it. Looking back, there were signs. Small moments that didn't make sense at the time. Comments about my job. Little jokes about money. The way she sometimes went quiet whenever something good happened to me. I ignored all of it. Because that's what friends do, right? They give each other the benefit of the doubt. The waiter was still standing beside the table. Waiting. The silence grew heavier. Then Olivia leaned back in her chair and laughed softly. "What?" she asked. A few guests looked confused. Others suddenly seemed very interested in their drinks. I stared directly at her. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Then a terrifying thought entered my mind. What if this dinner had never been about celebrating my success? What if it had been planned for something else entirely? Olivia and I met when we were 25. Neither of us had much money. We shared a tiny apartment with peeling paint and unreliable heating, split grocery bills down to the dollar, and spent evenings dreaming about the lives we hoped to build. She wanted a creative career that would make people notice her. I wanted stability, a home, and work I could be proud of. For years, we were inseparable. When I got my first promotion, Olivia brought cupcakes to my office. When she landed a new marketing job, I helped her move across town. We celebrated birthdays together, survived breakups together, and sat through endless conversations about bosses, relationships, and family drama. At least, that's how I remembered it. Looking back, I can see that things started changing long before the restaurant. The first time I noticed something strange was after my promotion to department manager 3 years earlier. We were having coffee when Olivia asked about my new salary. I hesitated, but she insisted. "Come on, Steph. We're best friends." So I told her. She smiled and said, "Wow, that's a lot more than I expected." The comment seemed harmless, but her tone lingered in my mind. After that, little remarks became more frequent. "Must be nice to afford vacations like that. Corporate people live in a different world. I guess some of us chose the wrong career." She usually laughed after saying these things, so I laughed too. I told myself she was joking. But the jokes always seemed to point in the same direction. When I bought my condo, Olivia congratulated me. Then she spent the rest of the evening talking about how impossible it was for ordinary people to own property. When I mentioned that I had been saving for years, she rolled her eyes. "You're so disciplined," she said. "Some of us actually try to enjoy life." The words stung more than I admitted. Still, I kept defending her in my head. She was stressed. Her jobs hadn't worked out the way she hoped. Life was hard. Real friends are supposed to be understanding. So I ignored the uncomfortable feeling that appeared whenever money or career success became part of the conversation. Then came my biggest promotion. The company announced it at a quarterly meeting. By lunchtime, everyone seemed to know. My phone filled with messages, and Olivia called me before I even left the office. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "This deserves a real celebration." She sounded excited. Genuine. Happy. 2 days later, she sent me a reservation confirmation for a high-end restaurant downtown. The kind of place where the menu didn't list prices online. I hesitated. "Olivia, this place is expensive." "Relax," she replied. "It's a special occasion. Everyone wants to celebrate you." Something about that sentence felt strange. Everyone wants to celebrate you. Not "we're celebrating together." Not "let's have dinner." Everyone wants to celebrate you. I ignored the feeling and agreed. Over the next week, more people were added to the reservation. Friends from different social circles. Former co-workers. People I hadn't spoken to in months. Olivia invited them, one friend told me. She said this was your big night. By the time Friday arrived, the guest list had doubled. I should have questioned it. I should have paid attention to the growing discomfort in my chest. Instead, I kept telling myself that I was lucky to have friends who cared enough to organize something so elaborate. That was the mistake that led me to the restaurant table, the waiter, and a bill with my name attached to it. The more I replayed that night in my head, the more details started bothering me. Not the obvious things. The small things. The things that seemed insignificant at the time. A week before the dinner, Olivia became unusually involved in every detail of the event. She created a group chat. She coordinated schedules. She selected the restaurant. She even chose where everyone would sit. At first, I found it flattering. Now it felt different. Looking back, It was as if she wasn't organizing a celebration. She was producing a performance. A few days before the dinner, we met for coffee after work. I remember the smell of roasted beans and rain hitting the windows. Olivia seemed distracted. She kept checking her phone, smiling at messages, typing responses quickly whenever I looked away. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course," she said. Then she changed the subject immediately. That wasn't unusual for most people. But it was unusual for Olivia. She normally told me everything. Or at least she used to. As we talked, she suddenly asked a strange question. "So, how much of a raise did they actually give you?" I laughed. "Why?" "I'm just curious." I gave her a rough estimate. Her eyebrows lifted. "Where?" The word sounded almost identical to the one she'd used years earlier when asking about my salary. "Where?" Not congratulations. Not that's amazing. Just where? Then she stared into her coffee for a few seconds. "You know," she said quietly, "sometimes I wonder how different my life would have been if I'd made different choices." I wasn't sure how to respond. Everyone has regrets. Everyone wonders about roads they didn't take. But there was something heavy in her voice. Something bitter. Before I could say anything, she forced a smile. "Forget it. This week's about you." At the time, I thought she was being supportive. Now I wonder if she was trying to convince herself. Over the next few days, more strange moments appeared. One evening, I received a message from a former co-worker named Karen. Karen and I hadn't spoken in almost a year. Her message surprised me. "Looking forward to Friday. Olivia says it's going to be unforgettable." Unforgettable. An odd choice of words. I replied with a laughing emoji and didn't think much about it. The next day, another guest sent me a similar message. "Can't wait for your big surprise." I stared at the screen. My surprise? I assumed Olivia had planned some kind of speech or gift. Maybe a slideshow. Maybe a funny memory video. It seemed harmless. Yet every time someone mentioned the dinner, they sounded strangely excited. More excited than I was. By Friday afternoon, I felt a knot in my stomach. Nothing specific. Just a feeling. The kind of feeling you get before a storm arrives. That evening I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early. The hostess escorted me to a private dining room in the back. I stopped walking the moment I saw it. The room was enormous. Far larger than I expected. At least 20 seats. Maybe more. A custom banner hung on one wall. "Congratulations, Stephanie." Gold decorations covered the tables. Champagne buckets stood ready in every corner. I felt embarrassed. This was too much. Far too much. Then Olivia appeared behind me. "Perfect timing," she said with a bright smile. For a brief moment, I almost relaxed. Almost. But then I noticed something. Several guests were already there. And when they looked at me, some of them exchanged glances. Quick glances. The kind people make when they know something you don't. That was the moment an uncomfortable question entered my mind. What exactly had Olivia been telling everyone about this dinner? The dinner started exactly at 7. At first, everything seemed normal. People arrived in small groups, greeting each other with hugs and laughter. The private room gradually filled with conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the smell of expensive food drifting in from the kitchen. I tried to relax. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe all the strange feelings I'd had during the week was simply nerves. After all, I wasn't used to being the center of attention. Olivia certainly seemed determined to make me the center of attention. Every few minutes she stood up and made another announcement. "Let's raise a glass to Stephanie." Everyone cheered. A few minutes later. "Stephanie has worked harder than anyone I know." More applause. Then, this promotion couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. More cheering. The compliments should have made me feel happy. Instead, they made me uncomfortable. It felt excessive. Almost rehearsed. As the evening continued, waiters kept bringing food. And bringing more food. And then even more. Huge seafood platters. Premium steaks. Imported wines. Champagne bottles. Desserts that looked like pieces of art. I watched in surprise as guests ordered whatever they wanted without hesitation. Nobody even glanced at the prices. At one point, a man I barely knew ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than my monthly car payment. The table erupted in approval. Olivia laughed loudly. Tonight is a special occasion. Something about the way she said it made me uneasy. I started paying closer attention. Several times, I noticed people thanking me. Not for the promotion. For the dinner. "You're so generous, Steph. Seriously, this is incredible. Nobody throws celebrations like this anymore." Each comment left me confused. I smiled politely, but inside, questions were beginning to form. Why did everyone keep thanking me? I hadn't organized any of this. I hadn't chosen the restaurant. I hadn't invited most of these people. And I certainly hadn't told anyone I was paying. Then came the first moment that truly alarmed me. I was walking back from the restroom when I passed two guests standing near the hallway. They didn't notice me immediately. "I still can't believe she's covering everything," one of them said. The other laughed. "With her new salary? She can afford it." My footsteps froze. Covering everything? Before I could say anything, they saw me. Their expressions changed instantly. "Oh, hey Stephanie." The conversation ended. Too quickly. Too awkwardly. For the rest of the evening, that exchange echoed in my mind. Covering everything. Where had they gotten that idea? Back at the table, Olivia was speaking to another group of guests. As I approached, the conversation abruptly stopped. Everyone smiled. Too quickly. Too perfectly. I sat down and felt a chill spread through my chest. For the first time all evening, I wasn't wondering whether something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. Then the final round of desserts arrived. The room was full of laughter. People were relaxed. Satisfied. Happy. Almost as if they had been waiting for something. And 20 minutes later, the waiter appeared carrying a black leather folder. The bill. I watched him walk directly toward our table. Toward me. And suddenly every strange moment from the entire week began connecting together. Like pieces of a puzzle. A puzzle I wasn't going to like the answer to. The waiter stopped beside my chair and carefully placed the black folder in front of me. The room went strangely quiet. Not completely silent. Just quieter than it should have been. Conversations slowed. People watched. Waiting. At first, I still believed there had been some misunderstanding. Restaurants make mistakes. Reservations get confused. Someone had probably selected the wrong payment arrangement. I opened the folder. The total was exactly what I had seen before. $4,872.16. My heart began to pound. I looked up at the waiter. There must be a mistake. His expression immediately became uncomfortable. No, He glanced toward Olivia. Then back to me. The arrangements were made in advance. A knot formed in my stomach. What arrangements? The waiter hesitated. Clearly, he didn't want to be involved. The organizer informed us that the entire evening would be hosted by you. The organizer. I slowly turned toward Olivia. She was holding her wine glass with both hands. Watching me. Almost enjoying the moment. Olivia? My voice sounded weaker than I intended. What is he talking about? She blinked innocently. What do you mean? The table became completely silent. Every guest was listening now. The waiter says someone told the restaurant I was paying for everyone. For a brief second, something flashed across her face. Then she smiled. Oh. Just one word. Oh. As if she had only just realized the situation. I thought you knew. Several people around the table nodded. Knew? Knew what? My pulse accelerated. Knew what, Olivia? She set down her glass. That this was your treat. The words hit me like a physical blow. My treat? You got a huge promotion, Steph. She laughed lightly. You said you wanted to celebrate. No, I said immediately. I agreed to come to dinner. The room felt smaller. Hotter. Olivia shrugged. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The word almost made me angry enough to laugh. 20 people. A private dining room. Thousands of dollars in food and alcohol. None of that happened because of a misunderstanding. Then one of the guests spoke. Wait. A woman across the table looked confused. Olivia told us Stephanie invited everyone. Another guest nodded. Yeah. We were told she wanted to thank everyone for supporting her. My chest tightened. I looked around the room. Faces that had seemed friendly an hour earlier now looked uncertain. Confused. Suspicious. Everyone had been told a different version of the story. And suddenly I understood why people had been thanking me all night. Why nobody questioned the expensive orders. Why everyone seemed so comfortable spending money that wasn't theirs. Because they genuinely believed I had offered. Olivia leaned back. If this is about the money, just say so. The room froze. I stared at her. If this is about the money. As if I were being unreasonable. As if I were creating a problem. As if a bill larger than many people's monthly rent wasn't sitting in front of me. The gaslighting was so smooth it almost worked. Almost. Then she added something that changed everything. Honestly, Steph, after that raise, I didn't think this amount would matter to you. Several people shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their eyes. because now they heard it too. The bitterness. The resentment. The jealousy hidden beneath her smile. And for the first time that evening, I stopped feeling embarrassed. I started feeling angry. Very angry. Because this was no misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. And deep down, I was beginning to suspect that Olivia had planned every single part of it. The anger hit me so suddenly that I had to grip the edge of the table to keep my composure. A few minutes earlier, I had been confused. Now I was starting to see what was happening. Olivia had created a situation where no matter what I did, I would lose. If I paid the bill, I would lose nearly $5,000. If I refused, I would look selfish in front of 20 people. It was a trap. A carefully constructed trap. And she knew it. The waiter remained standing nearby, clearly wishing he could disappear. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nobody wanted to be in the middle of this. But nobody was leaving either. People were curious. They wanted to see how the story ended. I took a slow breath. Let's clarify something, I said. My voice was calm now. Calmer than I felt. I never agreed to pay for everyone. Several guests exchanged looks. One man frowned. Wait. Seriously? I nodded. I was invited to this dinner just like the rest of you. The confusion around the room grew instantly. People began looking toward Olivia. She responded with an annoyed sigh. Oh, come on. Come on. As if I were making a scene over nothing. You knew this was a celebration for you. That doesn't mean I agreed to pay nearly $5,000. Her smile tightened. For the first time, a crack appeared in her perfect performance. You're acting like I committed a crime. I stared at her. The frightening part was that she genuinely seemed to believe she was the victim. Or at least she wanted everyone else to believe it. Then another guest spoke up. Karen. A former co-worker who had texted me earlier in the week. Olivia, she said carefully, you told us Stephanie specifically wanted to thank everyone. The room grew even quieter. Olivia turned toward her. I assumed she did. Assumed. Another carefully chosen word. Karen frowned. No. You said she offered. Several people immediately nodded. I remember that too. Me too. That's what I heard. The atmosphere shifted. The certainty Olivia had controlled all evening began slipping away. People were starting to compare stories. And the stories didn't match. For the first time, I saw concern flicker across Olivia's face. Only for a second. But it was there. Then she recovered. Honestly, this is ridiculous. She laughed. A little too loudly. If Stephanie doesn't want to pay, then don't pay. The room froze. I blinked. Did she really think it was that simple? Several guests immediately looked uncomfortable. Because they understood the problem. The restaurant expected payment. Someone had to cover the bill. One of the men cleared his throat. Maybe we should split it. A few people agreed immediately. Others looked annoyed. The expensive wine suddenly seemed less enjoyable now that they might have to pay for it themselves. Olivia crossed her arms. I wasn't planning on splitting anything. Of course she wasn't. The organizer. The person who had chosen the restaurant. The person who invited everyone. the person who created this disaster. And somehow she expected to contribute nothing. That was when something inside me shifted. A memory surfaced. 2 months earlier, Olivia and I had attended a networking event together. One of my executives had asked about her career. Before I could answer, Olivia had joked. Maybe Stephanie can hire me someday if she keeps climbing the ladder. Everyone laughed. At the time, I laughed too. But later that night, I remembered the expression on her face. It wasn't a joke. It was resentment. Years of resentment. Years of comparisons. Years of watching my life move forward while hers remained stuck. And suddenly this dinner no longer felt like an impulsive mistake. It felt like revenge. The realization sent a chill through me. Because if I was right, then this evening wasn't the beginning of the problem. It was the result of something that had been building for years. And I had completely missed it. The bill eventually got divided. Not because Olivia helped. Not because she took responsibility. But because several guests felt trapped by the situation and reluctantly agreed to pay their share. The mood in the room had completely changed. The laughter was gone. The celebration was over. People who had arrived expecting a joyful evening now sat in uncomfortable silence, avoiding eye contact and checking their phones. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked irritated. And a few looked angry. At Olivia. At me. At the situation. As everyone began calculating what they owed, I noticed something interesting. Olivia wasn't worried anymore. In fact, she looked strangely satisfied. That bothered me more than anything else. A normal person would have been embarrassed. Ashamed. Apologetic. Instead, she looked like someone whose plan had succeeded. Even if not perfectly. Even if not exactly as intended. The restaurant staff processed payments one by one. Several guests complained quietly about the cost. One woman stared at her receipt and muttered, "I would have ordered differently if I'd known." A man beside her nodded. Same. Olivia didn't react. She simply sipped her wine. Watching. Observing. Almost studying everyone's reactions. That's when another memory surfaced. A month earlier, we had attended a birthday party together. One of our mutual friends had congratulated me on an industry award. Before I could respond, Olivia interrupted. "Stephanie's becoming famous." Everyone laughed. Then she added, "Pretty soon she'll forget the rest of us." The group laughed again. I had laughed too. But now, sitting across from her, I remembered the expression on her face after the joke. Nobody else noticed it. I did now. The smile had disappeared almost instantly, leaving behind something much darker. Jealousy. The realization made my stomach turn. How many warning signs had I ignored? How many moments had I dismissed because I wanted to believe the best about someone I loved like a sister? As people prepared to leave, Karen approached me. She lowered her voice. "Something feels off." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She glanced toward Olivia. Then back at me. "I don't think this was an accident." The words sent a chill through my body. Because they confirmed what I had already begun to suspect. Karen hesitated. Then added something even stranger. Earlier this week, Olivia called me. My heart skipped a beat. About the dinner? Karen nodded. She spent nearly 30 minutes talking about you. Talking about me how? Karen looked uncomfortable. As if she was trying to convince everyone that you had changed. Changed? The word hit me hard. What exactly did she say? Karen hesitated again. Then she sighed. She said success had gone to your head. I felt my chest tighten. She said you liked showing off. Another blow. She said you wanted everyone to see how successful you'd become. The room suddenly felt cold. Because none of that sounded like a misunderstanding. That sounded deliberate. Calculated. Planned. Karen glanced around to make sure nobody was listening. Then she leaned closer. Honestly? I nodded. I think she wanted people to judge you tonight. For several seconds I couldn't speak. The pieces were starting to fit together. The oversized guest list. The expensive restaurant. The constant references to money. The assumption that I would pay. The comments about my success. This wasn't about a dinner. This wasn't even about the bill. This was about destroying the image people had of me. And if Karen was right, Olivia had spent weeks preparing for it. But the most disturbing questions still remained unanswered. Why? What had I done that made my best friend want to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew? And as I watched Olivia laughing with a few remaining guests near the exit, I realized I was finally ready to find out. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bill. Olivia's smile. The confused faces around the table. And Karen's words. I think she wanted people to judge you. By 3 a.m, I was sitting on my couch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, replaying years of friendship in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable memories surfaced. Moments I had ignored. Comments I had dismissed. Little signs that suddenly looked very different. My phone buzzed shortly after 8 the next morning. For a moment, I hoped it was Olivia. Part of me still wanted an explanation. An apology. Something. Instead, it was a message from a woman named Rachel. One of the guests from the dinner. We weren't particularly close. In fact, we'd only met a few times. Her text was short. Can we talk? A knot immediately formed in my stomach. I replied yes. A few seconds later my phone rang. Rachel sounded nervous. Stephanie, I don't really know how to say this. My pulse quickened. Just say it. There was a pause. Then she sighed. Something happened before the dinner. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? Olivia called several of us. That wasn't surprising. I already knew she had contacted guests. But Rachel's tone suggested something more. About the reservation? No. The answer came immediately. About you. Silence filled my apartment. Rachel continued carefully. She said she was worried about you. I laughed bitterly. Worried about me? That's what she told people. My hands tightened around the phone. Rachel explained that about a week before the dinner, Olivia had contacted multiple guests individually. Not through the group chat. Privately. According to Rachel, the conversations all followed the same pattern. Olivia would begin by praising me. Talking about my promotion. My success. My career. Then she would slowly shift the conversation. Stephanie's changed. Money affects people. I barely recognize her anymore. Small comments. Subtle comments. Comments designed to plant doubt. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just enough to influence how people viewed me. I felt sick. Because it sounded exactly like something Olivia would do. Carefully. Quietly. Without leaving evidence. Rachel wasn't finished. There was one thing that really bothered me. I swallowed hard. What? Another pause. Then she said, Olivia told us not to mention those conversations to you. The room suddenly felt colder. My grip tightened on the phone. Why? Rachel laughed nervously. She said you would get defensive. Of course she did. I thanked Rachel for telling me. We ended the call. For several minutes I sat in complete silence. Then another notification appeared. This time from Karen. The message contained a screenshot. No explanation. No text. Just a screenshot. My heart immediately started racing. It was part of a group chat. A chat I had never seen before. A chat that included Olivia and several guests from the dinner. I stared at the image. Then I saw the message. And everything changed. Olivia had written it 4 days before the dinner. The message read, By the end of Friday, everyone will finally see who Stephanie really is. I felt my blood run cold. Because that wasn't frustration. That wasn't jealousy. That wasn't even passive-aggressive behavior anymore. That was a plan. And suddenly I realized the dinner itself had never been the goal. The dinner was only the first step. I stared at the screenshot for almost 10 minutes. The message wasn't long. But it changed everything. By the end of Friday, everyone will finally see who Stephanie really is. There was no misunderstanding hidden inside those words. No confusion. No innocent explanation. Olivia hadn't accidentally created an awkward situation. She had planned one. My hands were shaking as I called Karen. She answered immediately. I knew you'd see it. Where did this come from? I asked. Karen hesitated. Then she lowered her voice. Someone from the chat sent it to me. My heart skipped a beat. Who? I promised not to say. Part of me wanted to push harder. But I understood. If someone was secretly sharing information, they were taking a risk. Is there more? I asked. Several seconds passed. Then Karen answered. Yes. My stomach dropped. A minute later, 3 more screenshots appeared on my phone. I opened the first one. The messages were dated 6 days before the dinner. Olivia had created a private group chat with several guests. Not everyone. Only certain people. People she considered close enough to trust. Or manipulate. The conversation started normally. Discussions about the restaurant. The guest list. Arrival times. Then everything changed. One guest wrote, Do you think Stephanie will actually pay for all this? Olivia responded almost immediately. Of course she will. A laughing emoji followed. Then another message. She wants everyone to know how successful she's become. My chest tightened. I opened the second screenshot. The conversation became worse. Far worse. One woman asked whether the dinner was becoming too expensive. Olivia replied, "Don't worry." Stephanie practically insisted. Another laughing emoji. Then came the message that made me put the phone down for a moment. I actually needed a second to breathe. Olivia had written, "After her promotion, she acts like she's better than everyone." I stared at the words. 12 years. 12 years of friendship. And this was what she had been saying behind my back. I felt angry. But beneath the anger was something worse. Grief. Because the person I thought I knew no longer existed. Or maybe she never had. I opened the third screenshot. This one contained the final piece. The piece that explained everything. A guest had asked a simple question. "Why does this bother you so much?" Several people reacted with laughing emojis. Then Olivia answered. Her response was longer than the others. Long enough that she probably forgot anyone might ever read it. I read every word twice. 3 times. 4. Then I sat in complete silence. According to Olivia, she had applied for the same management position at her company 2 years earlier. She didn't get it. A few months later, she lost her job. Then came freelance work. Financial struggles. Professional setbacks. Meanwhile, she watched my career continue to grow. Promotion after promotion. Achievement after achievement. And somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a friend. She started seeing me as proof of her own failures. Her final message said, "Some people need to be humbled." The room felt cold. Because I finally understood. The dinner wasn't about money. The dinner wasn't even about embarrassment. It was punishment. A public punishment. Designed to knock me down. To make people question my character. To turn my success into something ugly. Then another message arrived from Karen. Just 4 words. "You need the rest." The rest? My pulse quickened. If these screenshots were only part of the conversation. What else had Olivia been saying? I didn't wait for Karen to send the rest. By that point, I already knew enough. Or at least I thought I did. The truth was that every new screenshot hurt more than the last. By noon, my phone contained dozens of messages. Some came from Karen. Others came from Rachel. And a few came from people I barely knew. Apparently, once the first person started talking, others began talking too. Secrets have a strange way of collapsing. All it takes is one crack. Then the entire wall comes down. The new screenshots painted an ugly picture. Not because Olivia had insulted me. That part was painful, but manageable. What shocked me was how long she had been doing it. Months. Maybe years. I found conversations where she mocked my work schedule. Conversations where she joked about my apartment. Conversations where she implied I looked down on everyone. Each message followed the same pattern. Nothing extreme. Nothing dramatic. Just enough poison to slowly influence people's opinions. One message stopped me cold. It had been written almost 8 months earlier. Someone had congratulated me on buying my condo. Olivia replied. Success is her entire personality now. Several people had reacted with laughing emojis. I stared at the screen. For a moment, I questioned everything. Had people secretly been laughing at me for years? Had I been the joke? Then another message arrived from Karen. This one wasn't a screenshot. It was a warning. Olivia is already calling people. I immediately called her. What do you mean? Karen sounded exhausted. She's trying to control the story. Of course she was. The dinner had failed. The humiliation hadn't worked the way she intended. Now she was trying to save herself. Karen explained that Olivia was telling people I had become obsessed with money. That I was overreacting. That I was destroying a friendship over one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding. The phrase made me laugh out loud. For days, she had manipulated guests. Lied about the dinner. Spread stories behind my back. And now she wanted to call it a misunderstanding. That's when my phone lit up. Olivia. Calling. For a few seconds I simply stared at her name. Then I answered. Neither of us spoke immediately. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. I can't believe you're doing this. I almost laughed again. Doing what? Turning everyone against me. The accusation was so absurd that I nearly dropped the phone. Against you? People are sending me screenshots, Stephanie. There was anger in her voice. Real anger. Not guilt. Not regret. Anger. As though she were the victim. I took a deep breath. Did you tell people I was paying for dinner? Silence. Olivia. More silence. Then. That's not the point. I closed my eyes. That answer told me everything. Did you tell people I had changed? Another pause. Then. Maybe you have. The conversation was over. At least for me. For the first time since the restaurant, I wasn't confused. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't searching for explanations. I saw the truth clearly. Olivia wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. And she wasn't going to admit what she had done. Which meant I only had one option left. I was going to confront her publicly. With every screenshot. Every message. Every lie. And this time, everyone would see who Olivia really was. For the next 2 days, my phone never stopped buzzing. Messages. Calls. Questions. Apologies. People who had stayed silent at the restaurant were suddenly reaching out. Some wanted to know what was true. Others wanted to explain why they hadn't spoken up sooner. A few simply wanted to distance themselves from the situation. The most surprising part was how many people had experienced similar behavior from Olivia. Not on the same scale. Not as extreme. But enough to recognize a pattern. One friend told me Olivia regularly shared private conversations. Another said she often twisted stories to make herself look like the victim. Someone else admitted they had stopped telling Olivia personal information years ago because it somehow always became gossip. As the stories accumulated, a picture emerged. The restaurant dinner hadn't been an isolated event. It was simply the first time her behavior had exploded in public. By Saturday afternoon, several people suggested the same thing. We should all talk. Normally, I would have avoided something like that. I hate drama. I hate public confrontations. But this situation had already become public. And I was tired of letting other people define the narrative. So I agreed. The meeting took place Sunday evening in a private room at a local cafe. About a dozen people showed up. Karen was there. Rachel too. Several guests from the dinner. A few mutual friends. And finally, Olivia. The moment she walked in, the atmosphere changed. People stopped talking. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked irritated. Olivia seemed confident. Almost defiant. She sat down without greeting anyone. Crossed her arms. And immediately said, "I hope we're not doing this to attack me." The irony was unbelievable. For several seconds, nobody responded. Then Karen spoke first. "No one's attacking you." Olivia scoffed. "Really? Because that's what this feels like." I watched her carefully. She still believed she could control the conversation. Still believed she could manipulate the room. For years, that strategy had worked. This time it didn't. Rachel pulled out her phone. Then explained this. She read one of the messages aloud. The room fell silent. Olivia's expression changed. Only slightly. But enough. Another person read a different message. Then another. And another. Each screenshot added another crack. Each message destroyed another excuse. Soon the table was covered with phones displaying screenshots. Evidence. Dates. Conversations. Patterns. Things that could no longer be explained away. At first Olivia tried denying everything. Then minimizing it. Then reframing it as jokes. Then claiming people were taking things out of context. The explanations kept changing. And everyone noticed. At one point, a mutual friend named Melissa leaned forward. She looked genuinely hurt. "You told me Stephanie looked down on me." Olivia froze. Melissa continued. "And then you told Stephanie that I was jealous of her." Silence. The realization spread across the room. People weren't just discovering lies. They were discovering that Olivia had been turning friends against each other for years. One conversation at a time. One rumor at a time. One manipulation at a time. I could actually see the moment everything collapsed. It happened when Karen asked a simple question. "Do you regret it?" The room became completely still. Everyone waited. Olivia looked around the table. At all the faces. At all the evidence. At all the people who had once trusted her. And then she answered. "No." Several people gasped. Others stared in disbelief. But Olivia wasn't finished. If people are upset, maybe they should ask why they needed to hear the truth in the first place. The words landed like a bomb. Because in that moment, she revealed something important. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. Not really. And suddenly I understood something that brought unexpected clarity. There was no friendship left to save. The friendship had ended long before the restaurant. I just hadn't known it yet. The meeting ended less than 20 minutes after Olivia said she didn't regret anything. There was nothing left to discuss. No misunderstanding to resolve. No friendship to repair. No apology coming. People began gathering their things in silence. One by one, they stood up from the table. But something had changed. When Olivia arrived, she had walked into a room full of people she believed she could still influence. Now she was leaving a room full of people who finally saw the pattern. And she knew it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine uncertainty in her eyes. Not sadness. Not remorse. Fear. Small, but unmistakable. As everyone started leaving, Melissa stopped beside me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what?" She looked embarrassed. "For believing some of it." I nodded. I probably would have believed it too. And that was the truth. Manipulation works because it rarely looks like manipulation at first. It looks like concern, friendship, advice, protection. Olivia had understood that better than anyone. Over the next week, I made several decisions. Some were painful. Some were surprisingly easy. The first was obvious. I blocked Olivia everywhere. Her number, social media, email, everything. Not because I hated her, but because I finally understood that access is a privilege. And she had lost that privilege. The second decision was harder. I stepped away from several social circles we shared. At least temporarily. I needed space. Time to figure out which relationships were real and which had been built on Olivia's version of events. A few friendships faded naturally. Others became stronger. Stronger because they were finally based on honesty. Then came the most unexpected part. The restaurant. 3 days after the meeting, the restaurant manager called me. At first I thought something else had gone wrong. Instead, he told me that several guests had contacted them. Apparently, after learning the full story, people felt uncomfortable about how the evening unfolded. A group of guests voluntarily contributed additional money to cover the remaining service charges and staff gratuities. The manager wasn't calling about payment. He was calling to thank me for how I handled the situation. When the call ended, I sat quietly in my office, staring out the window, thinking. A month earlier, I would have been devastated by all of this. The betrayal, the embarrassment, the public humiliation. Now I felt something different. Relief. Because pretending is exhausting. And for years, I had been maintaining a friendship that only existed in my imagination. The hardest part came the following Friday. I deleted hundreds of photos. Birthday parties. Weekend trips. Holiday dinners. 12 years of memories. For a few moments, I hesitated. Not because I wanted Olivia back, but because I was grieving the person I thought she had been. Then I clicked delete. And something surprising happened. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't second-guess myself. Instead, I felt lighter. As though I had finally put down something heavy I had been carrying for years without realizing it. That evening, I received one final message. Not from Olivia. From Karen. It contained a single sentence. Sometimes losing the wrong person makes room for the right ones. I read it 3 times. Then smiled. Because for the first time since the restaurant, I believed she might be right. It's been almost a year since that dinner. Sometimes people still ask about it. Usually after hearing fragments of the story from mutual friends. The expensive restaurant. The surprise bill. The group chat. The public confrontation. From the outside, it probably sounds like one dramatic evening. One terrible friendship ending badly. But that's not what I remember. What I remember is the lesson. The lesson took me 36 years to learn. Not everyone who celebrates your success is happy for you. Some people clap while secretly hoping you fail. Some people smile while keeping score. And some people stay close not because they love you, but because they need access to your life. That realization was painful. But it was also freeing. For a long time, I blamed myself. I replayed conversations, memories, decisions. I kept asking the same question. How did I miss it? How did I spend 12 years calling someone my best friend without seeing who she really was? Eventually, I found an answer. Because trust isn't blindness. Trust is a choice. And choosing to believe the best in someone is not a mistake. The mistake belongs to the person who abuses that trust. That understanding changed something inside me. I stopped feeling embarrassed about what happened. The embarrassment was never mine to carry. Olivia made her choices. I made mine. And the consequences belonged to both of us. Today my life looks different. Smaller in some ways. Better in others. My circle of friends is not as large as it once was. But it's honest. The people around me now celebrate good news without resentment. They don't compete with me. They don't secretly keep score. And they don't punish me for succeeding. Ironically, losing Olivia improved relationships I thought had been damaged forever. Several people from that dinner became close friends. Karen is one of them. Rachel too. When the manipulation disappeared, genuine friendships finally had room to grow. As for Olivia, I haven't spoken to her since the meeting. Not once. A few months ago, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved to another city. I don't know whether that's true. And honestly, it doesn't matter. For a long time, I thought closure meant getting answers. An explanation. A confession. An apology. I was wrong. Closure came the moment I stopped needing those things. The moment I accepted reality exactly as it was. There is one final detail I never mentioned. A week after I blocked Olivia, I received an email from a guest who attended the dinner. Someone I barely knew. The message contained only one sentence. You handled that evening with more grace than most people would have. At the time, I didn't think much about it. Now I do. Because the real victory wasn't exposing Olivia. It wasn't proving I was right. And it certainly wasn't winning some argument. The real victory was refusing to become like her. Refusing to answer manipulation with manipulation. Refusing to answer cruelty with cruelty. Refusing to let bitterness define me. If you're listening to this story and you've experienced something similar, here's what I learned. Pay attention when someone constantly needs to diminish your accomplishments. Pay attention when a friend only feels comfortable when you're struggling. Pay attention when support starts feeling conditional. And most importantly, never shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. The right people won't resent your success. They'll celebrate it. The dinner that was supposed to humiliate me ended up giving me something far more valuable. Clarity. Boundaries. And the courage to walk away from people who mistake kindness for weakness. Looking back now, I don't remember the bill. I don't remember the embarrassment. I don't even remember the restaurant. I remember the moment I finally chose myself. And that decision changed everything.